Madam Chair, you are live.
All right, welcome everybody. I would like to call the Board of Supervisors of Elections meeting to order. It is Thursday, November 21st, 2024 at 7 o'clock. And let me go through the roll call. Member Debbie Atzik.
Here.
Eileen Leahy here. City Clerk Regina Watkins Eldridge.
Here.
Elections Associate Teresa Buccalo.
Here.
And special guest for this evening, Mitchell Stevenson. All right. Any public comments submitted, Regina? No?
No.
All right, great. Minutes, any comments on the minutes, Debbie?
None.
I didn't have any either, so if I can have a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Yep. I move that the minutes of October 17th, 2024 be approved.
All right, I second. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, moving along to updates from the City Clerk Election Administrator Watkins Eldridge.
Hello. We don't have any real updates at this time. Everything is running smoothly. We did receive a petition from Mr. Kuhnha, and we forwarded that petition to the Anne Arundel County Board Elections Director, so he can begin the process on telling us how we can complete it. So he said he would be in touch as soon as possible.
Okay.
Who is it from, Regina?
Mr. Kuhnha. Teresa has more details than I do. I just processed the information, sent it to the county. Yeah.
Right.
Do you have the name, Teresa?
I do. His name is William Richard Kuna.
Kuna.
Yeah, from Ward 8.
So this is an unaffiliated voter who is applying to be for alderman in Ward 8. And so information has been sent to him that he needs a minimum of 100 signatures from registered voters in Ward 8. So great. So I'm glad that you got that processed and up to the county. So we'll just have to wait to get the feedback from the county and then meet to go over all of those names and signatures to see if he has 100. I think he said he submitted about 150. All right, so that's great, because usually the recommendation is to submit at least 20% more than you need, so that you because there might be some that don't pan out. Okay.
How do you spell his last name?
It's C-U-N-H-A.
Okay. And you know, I know an unaffiliated is not a registered party, but I did come across a mailing from the MVA recently in April of this year, and it listed, how do I show this? It said Circle 1, party, Circle 1. And for the parties, they listed Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, No Labels Maryland, unaffiliated, and other. So if you went in there and you circled unaffiliated, it's calling unaffiliated a party, which is not actually so.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of confusing. I agree they would need the petition, but it is, the MVA is calling unaffiliated.
Okay, well, that's certainly something we can mention to the county.
Mm-hmm.
But we did get a I'm not sure if an opinion is the correct term, but we did get feedback from the Office of Law verifying it wasn't considered a party in this case. So I think we're good. I always am trying to think ahead, just something to put down as a to-do in the future. I know that you all have notified the polling the polling places we used in 2021, and things look good in terms of returning to those locations. If we use City Hall, it made me think we're going to have to arrange parking. Last time parking worked out that we just gave them, the card so they could park and get out, but that might be something we have to, if you guys could think about looking into.
We already started conversations with the transportation director regarding the parking.
Excellent, excellent. You're always ahead of me, Regina. That's good. That's great. Okay. Any other questions for Regina or Teresa?
No.
Nope. All right, on to new business. Certification of candidacy for alderman. We have a application from Harry Huntley. I've had a chance to review it. Have you had a chance to look at it, Debbie?
I did. I have no problems.
Okay, I didn't either. I thought it was complete and there were the appropriate signatures.
Yeah.
If you give me a motion to accept.
Okay, I move that we accept the certificate of candidacy for Harry Huntley for Ward 8. I'm sorry, Ward 1.
Okay, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so moved. So welcome Ashley Leonard from the Office of Law.
Yeah, apologies. I did a team meeting the other night and it always screws up my city system when I try to go back and forth between team and Zoom. So
All right, well, we're
I'm
glad you
here.
made it. Okay, so next item on the agenda is discussion about the voter education / election communication plan. So thank you, Mitchell, for coming to our meeting to get going on this important aspect of getting information out to registered voters in Annapolis, and actually all residents, so that if people aren't registered, they know how to get registered. We had done a plan with you back in 2021 that I think was quite successful. There were parts of it that I'm sure we want to follow up on, some things maybe we don't feel that we need to do. So we can kind of discuss that tonight. And then you also gave us a PowerPoint presentation on some thoughts that you have for this year. So if you can kind of walk us through it, that would be great.
Absolutely. Julian, can you call that up?
Yep, give me 2 seconds. It's the last one, the copy that Regina sent back, right? That one? That's the last one.
It's the same one. It's a Google slide deck.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this should be the last. Hang on, let me go get the right one.
I can resend you the link too.
No, I have it here.
Okay.
We can also, at the end of it, kind of review, and I know in the past we've talked a little bit about some of the priorities that might be different this year as opposed to past years.
While we're waiting on that, I found, and maybe Mitchell did this, but in 2021, a letter, a hard copy letter was mailed to all the registered voters in the city. And it just said, "Dear voter, as a registered resident, Democrat or Republican, the Board of Supervisors of Elections is providing the following notice regarding the primary election, which was September 21st. And so then it went on and it listed the candidates and for all the offices, including the Central Committee. And plus, if you have any questions, who to contact. So, I mean, I saved it, so I guess it was meaningful. Do you remember that, Mitchell? Did you all do this?
I
Did you
didn't
do it,
do that. We
Regina?
do not have access to all the voter addresses. Those kinds of letters would come from the clerk's office through the county.
Okay, because it's on city it's on city letterhead, but under Bose, under us.
Mhm.
And but if people open their mail and look at their mail, it was very clear, that a primary was coming up, and this is when it is and what you need to do, and these are the candidates. Do you remember that, Eileen?
Yeah, so there'll be a number of information coming from Bose and also from the county. There was also Regina and Susan worked hard on putting things on the website. We had an FAQ sheet that I think was very helpful.
It's
Do you wanna add
still,
something? Okay, so we can even update that. There were a lot of changes in 2021 due to the mail-in ballots. And so we have some changes this year that also need to be made, but people will be getting information. One of the things that we have noted, and I think is a priority moving forward, is encouraging people to make sure that their addresses are correct. That was cited in the last election. I think there was almost 1,500 addresses that were incorrect, but not only letting people know to change their addresses, but if someone receives a ballot or receives an application in the 2025 election, what to do with it. People didn't realize what they needed to do as far as just sending it back, because those types of letters don't get forwarded. The postal code doesn't forward it to a new address, but if they put it back in the mail and say return to sender or addressee unknown, it goes back to the Board of Elections, and then they can follow up on it. So I think it's important for us to educate people what to do in those cases.
Julian, I just emailed you the link to that document again, just in case
Yeah,
you're.
so I have it now. It looks
Okay.
like the version got corrupted and there's
Oh,
only 4 slides. That's why I thought there was something wrong. So I just went and restored another version of it. So that's what I've been doing over here. So yeah, I've got it now
Okay.
though. Be ready for
and
it.
Eileen, and Debbie, I just want to, what I'm talking about today is public communication, not direct voter contact.
Okay.
Correct.
Direct
Okay.
voter contact has to come, Anne Arundel County maintains those voter rolls, and they're the ones who are going to send that information that is addressed to a specific voter at a specific address. What I'm
Got
going to
it.
talk about is public communication from the communications office at the city.
Right.
So
And-
essentially,
and Debbie, I just want to say really quick, anything that the county sends out on behalf of the city and it's returned, it comes back to our PO Box 788.
Okay, good.
and Regina, there's a cost associated with each one of those mailings, right?
Yes,
From the
ma'am.
county.
Yes, ma'am.
$15,000-$16,000, something like that each time.
Yes, ma'am.
So whatever that, for you guys, whatever that is, that needs to come in the mayor's budget for FY26. And I'm going to talk about some things that are free and some things that have a cost associated. So we'll have to sit down and tally up all of whatever funds we're going to need to ensure that we've got these communications components, both from the Board of Elections and from the City Communications Office. Okay. So you all know who I am, Mitchell Stevenson, the Public Information Officer for the city. Next slide. We've got municipal elections coming up, as you all know. Mayor Buckley is termed out. We've got all 8 council members, and then any ballot questions that the council might move forward with. Next slide. And if we could save our questions to the end, this is a pretty short slide deck. It's really got kind of 4 sections. So first, I'm going to talk about the tools that we can use to deploy messages, talking about how do we know what things to tell people, how do we know when the messages should go out, and then the overall goals of public communication. Next slide. The tools in our toolbox. So we've got, these are not everything that we could potentially use, but I'm kind of going to go over each one. We have press releases. These are sent to news outlets, allowing the news organizations to help amplify our message. These could also be media advisories for a press conference that Board of Supervisors of Elections might hold, any of those kinds of things. Those are sent out to those news outlets, and they're also posted on the city website. Those are free. We can send as many of those as we want. Next, we've got the city website. There's information under the clerks section. That's something Regina was just talking about, the FAQs. All of that's free. as well as obviously the press releases. Social media, we're currently just using Facebook and Instagram. Those are all free unless we want to do paid engagement. If we do paid engagement, you can specify who you want to reach. You want to reach, registered voters in the city of Annapolis, or actually, I don't even know if you can do registered voters. You want to reach people 18 to 64 within the city of Annapolis. There's a cost associated with that. Bus wraps, these are pretty evergreen messages. There's a very long lead time on the fabrication of these wraps and then the deployment of them. They're also very costly. We did use bus wraps last time, and I'm going to talk about, kind of lessons learned about that in just a second. TV screens, we have the ability to do animated messages or video messages. We can use City of Annapolis TV channel. We have a public access TV channel. We've got video screens at Pip Moyer. We can also use our city's YouTube channel where we're broadcasting right now. We can also bring TV screens into other locations, into the finance window, into the planning and zoning window, permit window, and into transportation. So when we have something that is a video project, we do have the ability to deploy that to other locations. We have printed materials. Those can be flyers, postcards, signage. Those are cost for all of those. And then we have VMS signage. There's some availability of this for traffic and directional signage. The reason I like using VMS, particularly for municipal elections, is because people are not always tuned into municipal elections. We come right on the heels of a presidential, right before a gubernatorial cycle. So that's just gets people's attention while they're out driving around. Next slide. So these are some examples of the press releases that we sent out in 2021. Basically, we were notifying folks that we were having an election. Here's where the primary is. Here's where the voting locations will be. We got sued for our vote by mail program. So once that was cleared by the courts, we put out a press release saying, okay, we've been cleared to go ahead and move forward with our mail-in elections. Then we had the canvas for primary. So we were pushing out the returns for that. Then we had a recanvass for Ward 4. So we had to push out a notification that we were going to do a recount. Then we had the results of the recount. And then obviously we had the results of the general election. So this wasn't everything, but I felt like this was a good sampling. We all talk about process. We never advocate for a specific candidate or any of that. We really are tied into process. Next slide. When we do social media, nearly all of the social media we do, probably 90% of what we do is all pre-scheduled. So we figure out in our communications plan what messages we want to send and when we want to send them. You all get an opportunity, the Board of Supervisors of Elections, the clerk's office, and Anne Arundel County Board of Elections gets an opportunity to review that. Are these the messages we want to send? Is this the correct timing? Then I create the messages. So for example, here we had election, important dates in the election. When is the primary? When is the last day to register to vote? When is the general election? And when is the swearing in? We had messages around what are the voting locations? Where are the early voting sites? We paid out messaging about make sure you return your ballots in a timely way. We were sending ballots to every registered voter in the city. So then we had to prompt them, hey, make sure your address is correct. Make sure you return them. We also did some rapid response. So at some point, I believe Regina called me and said, people believe that the ballot drop boxes are locked. So I got in my car and ran over to the Pip Moyer Center, and that's my finger in that picture down there with the black background showing this is where the ballot goes in. This was just one of our rapid response pieces that we were deploying to help voters understand what was going on. They got there, they saw the lock on it, they were confused. Can I not put my ballot here? That's something we got out, within an hour of finding out about it. We had this little social media piece that we were able to deploy and stop misinformation that the voting boxes were locked. Next slide. This was one of the examples of a bus wrap. This particular ad that you're looking at is called a king tail. It's the back of the bus, so the rear end of the bus. If you've been sitting at an intersection with a transit bus in front of you, you've probably seen one of these ads. For each bus, this costs about $17.50 for 4 weeks, plus there's some setup costs. So I would calculate in about $2,000 for each bus we wanted to cover. We did 2 buses with the Kingtail and 2 buses with the Street Side Super King last year. The Street Side Super King is the very long ad along the side of the bus. And I think what I would do this time is do just one style, do the Kingtail, and do it on 4 buses. Because one of the things we didn't really take into consideration last time was that some of the buses sit on the lot. So we may have 4 buses or 2 buses, of which one is sitting on the lot for a good portion of the day, waiting for the next shift driver to come through. So we
Mitchell,
have
what's
4
the
buses.
Kingtail? I'm sorry, what's the Kingtail again?
The Kingtail is the back of the bus, the rear
Back of-
end of the
okay.
bus. Mhm. And the Street Side Super King is the side. That's the longer ad. I don't know if you remember this, Eileen, but we had a lot of trouble cutting out the where our ad was because of the wheelbases.
Right.
The Kingtail's very, it's a simple rectangle.
Best intentions.
Yeah, I know, right? I learned a lot on that one, but so this I would really consider only doing for a long lead message. So for example, telling folks that it's the primary starting in July and, you know, deploying that message over a long period of time, which is kind of what we did the last time. Next slide. These were some flyers that we did that basically just walked people through the process. One of the earliest ways to vote is to return your ballot. You know, you're going to get it in your mailbox. You're going to fill it out. You can return it to a drop box or a polling location, or you can put it in the mail. You can also vote in person. And we did this message in Spanish. These flyers we put around City Hall. I think we put them at the planning counter, at the finance counter, other locations. If we wanted to do a citywide mailing, I think we would probably want to do either add it to something that the Board of Elections is already doing. They're kind of prickly about that, so I don't know that that's always going to be a smooth path for us. The other option is to do bulk mail. There's a fairly long lead time for that, but this is probably, if we were to send a flyer like this, bulk mail to all 17,000 households in Annapolis, I would estimate $1 a piece. That would cover the fulfillment, the bulk mail postage, and the printing of the materials. If you're thinking about doing mailing like that, I wouldn't do just one. I would probably do 2 or 3. A lot of that you already get covered because candidates already send out mailers and inform people of, you know, when the election is and all of that. I don't know if you were asking me my opinion on whether that's a good use of our resources. I would say no. It's bulk mail is not really.
You had mentioned one time of putting it in with the water bill. Is that an
Yeah.
option?
That takes a very long lead time because the water bills are quarterly, and it takes them about 7 weeks to deploy all of the messages, and they need the materials 3 to 4 weeks in advance. So if you wanted to capture everyone in the city in time for an August 18th primary, for example, you're going to need to have that mailing ready by the end of May.
Okay.
Then we use the materials from, I don't know if you can tell, but from the Kingtail, there was kind of the same art that we used for the flyer. And then the next slide, Julian, is a video. I think it should auto start. I think I have it on auto start. Maybe not. Oh, you can't hear it. That's not very useful. Well, anyway, I voiced over a nice little video that we animated. We posted this at the Pip Moyer Rec Center, so it showed up on the TVs there. Basically the same messaging that we had on the flyer. You're going to get a ballot in the mail. You need to fill it out and return it. You can return it at one of these locations. You can also return it to your normal polling place, return it by mail. Really just walking people through the process and reminding them of what was going on. We also posted this on our city social media channels. And I can send this to you separately if you want after the meeting, just to give you an idea of kind of what our capabilities are. Next slide. We also did signage. These go on an H stake. These are the little wire stakes These signs are pretty inexpensive. They're $30 to $40 a piece. Again, reinforcing that it's election day, you're at the right place. One of the challenges we had for municipal elections last cycle is, as you know, Anne Arundel County Public Schools don't close for municipal elections like they do for presidential elections. So we do have some changes in polling locations during municipal elections. So having signage like this out front just readily identifies you're at the right place, you're here on the right day. Go ahead and go in and take care of your voting. Next slide. And then the VMS signs, there's a lot of rules around these from Maryland State Highway, what we can use them for. They really have to be sort of traffic oriented, but having this out in front of Pip Moyer Center when early voting starts can be helpful, just to remind people, oh, okay, here, it's election time and we're ready to vote. Next slide. It's just a little quote I thought speaks to, why we work so hard to inform the public and make sure that they know about what they need to do, where they need to be, how the process is going to work. It is a heavy lift for municipal elections because, it's not a presidential, we're not getting amplified through, throughout the process. Next slide. Message deployment. How do we deploy these messages? So most of our messages are scheduled messages. These are things like candidate deadlines, registration deadlines, primary election day and general election day reminders. Then we also have newsworthy messages. These are generally the election results, but they could be other things like the recanvass that I spoke of earlier from Ward 4 last year, like the lawsuit, those kind of things. Those are newsworthy messages. I can't pre-schedule those. I have to wait for you guys at the Board of Supervisors of Elections to tell me, okay, here's news you should put out. And then I move forward with putting it out. And then we have responsive messages. These are the rapid response kinds of things where we're correcting misinformation. Last cycle we did have, as Eileen spoke to earlier, we had an issue with people getting ballots mailed to their home that had the name of the previous tenant. People moved, they didn't move to an ERIC affiliated state where their name automatically got removed from the rolls when they registered in a new location, or they didn't, fill out a change of address at elections.maryland.gov. And so we had to do some rapid response because people were saying, I'm getting a ballot that's at my house that's not me. We had to say, first of all, it's illegal to use that to vote. And second of all, you should mark it to return to come back to the Board of Elections so they know that there's a problem with that voter and address. So those responsive messages are the things that we're probably dealing with same day, maybe within a couple of hours of getting the information that needs to be corrected of us pushing something out there. Next slide. Timing of the message. How do we know when to send the messages out? So basically, when I write the communications plan, I work back from November the 4th. That's really the big day that we're trying to get to. I'm going to take August 18th as an example of something how we might deploy messages. And I'm just going to speak about social media only here. So we've got a last day to register to vote before the primary election day of August 18th. That's the last day voters can change their registration, change their party affiliation, change their address and all of that ahead of the primary election day. So at the end of July, I might begin to pay out messaging. Hey, primary election day is coming up. Your last day to register to vote is going to be August 18th. And as we enter August, I might pay something out another week, maybe 2 weeks later, saying, hey, August 18th is coming up. Make sure you have everything you need to register to vote. Visit elections.maryland.gov to learn more. Maybe the day before, the day of, we say, hey, the deadline is fast approaching. Pay attention. If you need to change your registration or need to change your party affiliation, you've got one more day to do it. So that register to vote day is just one event, but I may pay out 4 or 5 messages over the course of several weeks to get us up to that point. Because we don't want to tell people the day of, oh, you need to make sure you have a copy of your lease or whatever the, elections board requires for you to register to vote at your new address. And people don't have enough time to take care of it. So we want to make sure we're giving our voters plenty of time to do the things they need to be prepared when election day comes around. Next slide. And in conclusion, I just have some communication goals. You know, we want to inform people and communicate the facts about the things that we know don't change, the dates, the locations, all of those kind of things. We want to provide voters with the resources they need to understand the process. How is the election going to be run? We do that through a variety of ways, you know, having things posted on the website, the FAQs, the press releases, the social media content, all of that. We don't tell voters who to vote for. We give them information on the voting process. Next, we work with the media. We issue the press releases. We answer questions. Throughout this process, we get a lot of inbound inquiries from the press. So we also do that to provide access and to ensure transparency about the process. And then we counter the misinformation. That's part of that whole rapid response deployment of messaging. We will get some misinformation somewhere along the line, and we just have to be ready to counter that and make sure we're getting the facts out. And always, 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 when I post something to social media or push something out into the world, making sure that there's a resource connected to it. Is that the city website? Is that the Anne Arundel County Board of Elections website? Is that elections.maryland.gov? Always making sure that we have something foundational for folks to go to so that they can get all the information they need. And next slide. I don't really know if this goes in this section, but this is the kind of information where I get my information from. So we will always push the public information from you all. Whatever you guys tell me needs to go out into the world, figure out a way to get it out there. The city clerk, the election supervisor, Anne Arundel County Board of Elections. We do not push any messages from candidates or campaigns. So we get asked that with some frequency. I want to, you know, have an event, or I'm doing something that's campaign related. Can you post it to the city websites? The answer is always no. That doesn't mean that elected officials who are incumbents will stay completely off city pages. They are still doing their job. And I'll just give an example of, you know, maybe the mayor, well, Mayor Buckley is term limited, but I'll use him as an example anyway. He's still the mayor, even when he was running for re-election. So if he went to an Eagle Scout presentation and gave a citation to some, you know, young person who'd done something, that's still meaningful for that young person. And we're not going to, you know, hide all of the elected officials away for a year just because it's an election. But I am very mindful of that and how that comes across to the public. So I try to be very sensitive to that and make sure that we express when we're posting those things that these are, you know, legitimate city functions that are happening. And then we may push some messages from the public. If there's confusion or an issue that requires clarification, I typically would not respond just myself to these kinds of things, but I would consult with Board of Supervisors of Elections and say, okay, we've got it. Somebody's, you know, commented something on the city Facebook page or Instagram page, and there's clearly some confusion has arisen that we need to address. I work with you guys. How do we frame this message? How do we get this out? How do we correct whatever's misinformation? So if that comes through, I'm not going to be acting solo. I will be working with you to, you know, we are all a team here on this one. And I think that's the end of the show. Got my last slide. That's me. There's my contact information and my office phone line and all of that. And I'm happy to entertain questions.
Well, thank you so much, Mitchell. That was great.
Yeah.
Debbie, do you have any particular questions?
Not really. It was very clear. I agree with a lot of the recommendations going forward. And just like Facebook and Instagram, you know, Facebook is used now mostly by the older and Instagram by the younger. So that, and I think those are the main two. TikTok and those others are not as important. We can boost as needed. Yeah, a lot of what I get is, you know, from the written paper, but a lot of people don't get the paper. Press releases can manage to go out to different avenues. So wherever you get your news, I saw something today or yesterday that radio really isn't that much either. I was surprised that people don't get their news that much from radio. I guess it's more.
Debbie, I want to say when I first started in this job, we really relied very heavily on the Capital newspaper to amplify our message. They would almost always, and Patch and Iron Annapolis and other outlets as well. And it is just not nearly as effective as it used to be. So that's why I showcase for you all of these other ways for us to get the word out, because not 100% of the people read the newspaper. Not 100% of the people are on social media. Not 100% of the people go to Pip Moyer. So we have to find ways to make inroads and make sure that we're getting the message out there. It's not a perfect system, but I'm one person and I have a part-time person. So, we do the best we can with the resources that we have.
I like the idea of the movable signs. I know they're supposed to be for traffic, but it would catch your eye, because it's something you normally don't see. So I just saw one on Forest Drive, I think yesterday or day before. It caught my eye because normally there's not a sign there.
Yeah.
And they could be moved around. But yeah, no, I think you're doing great. I don't have anything more than what you've said to add. What about you, Eileen?
No, I think it's great. I did have a couple of questions. One was for Mitchell, how effective did you think the bus wraps were?
I thought that they were pretty effective. Like I said, I think the only thing that I didn't realize was that sometimes you pay for an ad on a bus and they're not all traversing the city at all times. I think any ways that we can get out into the world and we can use bus stand advertising too. There's bus shelters at critical junctures in the city.
Yeah, I think if we expanded some of the print materials that we use, like we kind of did the posters kind of late, we got them up to the libraries and Pitt Moyer. I think if we got some of that out earlier, be great.
And I'll probably start writing the communications plan probably in December, and then I'll just do like I did last time with you all and put that in a Google Doc so that as I'm going through and writing it, you can see. And like I said, I do just start with November 4th and work backwards from there about, how important are the messages? How frequently do we need to deploy them? Are we using a press release for this, or are we using social media for that? Are we using printed materials? Maybe this is a good opportunity for video. Some of the things you can deploy very quickly. Creating a social media post is seconds. Creating that animated video took us nearly 3 weeks. So.
Yeah, I did one of these courses and they talked a lot about the utilizing YouTube in terms of getting your messages out for social media. But I think if I recall, there is some cost with that.
It depends if you want to do paid engagement or if you're just, putting it out there and then sharing it on Facebook or Instagram. But if you're just putting it on the city social media channel and sharing it on Facebook and Instagram, it's free. There's no cost to that.
Right. I think just a couple of the priorities that I'm thinking of are, because this is the municipal election, what's different from this election from 2021 is that we are going to be sending out applications for mail-in ballots. So people, if they want a mail-in ballot, have to complete one of our applications. They may be signed up with the county to automatically get a mail-in ballot, but it doesn't work that way. They have to sign up for the municipal elections. So everybody will be getting an application. They have to return that application in order to get a mail-in ballot. They don't have to do a mail-in ballot. There will always be in person. And I think that was one of the questions, or people were concerned that they couldn't vote in person because some people, that's what they want to do. So I think to get the message out is you have two options. There is no more absentee ballot as such. It's mail-in or it's in person. The polling locations right now look to be what we did in 2021. So that, we have had a pretty good run of consistency in the past few elections. In 2021, we did make a big change going from I think 13 polling locations to 8. And currently the plan is to stick with 8, and that should be sufficient. If I recall, we will get some signage from the county, particularly like vote here, this is where your ballot, your drop boxes are. It's kind of tough to make this, but I really encourage people use the drop box instead of the mail. I don't know if we can say that or how we can process it. I mean, but it does make a difference. I mean, the drop box is really in the past proved to be more efficient in terms of getting the ballots to us, because especially during COVID, people were concerned about the mail, and I think people still are concerned about the mail and getting it in on time. Let me see, a couple of other quick things were
And the early voting location is just PIP, is that right?
we don't do early voting for the city.
Or we don't?
Nope, and we don't do same day registration either.
Mhm.
So those are two different things. If we could also encourage people to become election judges,
Mhm.
that would really be helpful. Especially if we can engage Republican registered voters. They tend
And you
to,
need a Republican and a Democrat for each polling location?
you need,
Or the same number for each?
yes. Well, unaffiliated counts in there also.
Okay.
Gina, you want to say something?
I just want to let you know that we updated the application for election judges and sent it over to David for him to review it. He said he'd get it back to us as soon as possible.
Great.
And when I write the communications plan, I'll add this in, but that requires, they have to do a training.
There's several trainings.
Okay. And are
Some
those
of
in Bernie again?
And some of them can be virtual. It depends
okay.
on if they've done it before. I know if, that would be something to find out from them.
Mhm.
But to encourage election judges, and teenagers can be, if you're a registered voter, you can be a registered voter at the age of 16. And many schools will give them community service. So, but yeah, if we can focus again on the Republicans, that would be great. And then we talked about the change of address. The other thing I think you did a good job of last time was just illustrating diversity in terms of the voters.
Mhm.
Not just in terms of ethnicity, but also in terms of age, and also mobility. I think you had that last time too. And let's see. I think if we can get into the water bills, if you think that's effective, I think we can certainly make that a goal.
It can be effective, but I think there is a little bit of a diminishment of how effective that is, because even over the last 5 years, more people do their billing online.
No, that's
They
true.
may get their bill in the mail,
Mhm.
but they don't even open it. It's a prompt to go online and look and make sure that they,
Mhm.
that they know what the amount is.
Right. Did
It's
we
a very long lead time, and it's still pretty expensive. It's, essentially we're still looking at 80 cents a piece.
Right. I
Yeah.
can't remember if we did this for the elections. I know we tried it with the task force to send out information to all the city organizations and
Mhm.
encourage them to pass that information on too. And I know that that list has been updated.
Yeah, Hillary
the
keeps
last
that
one.
updated. We have those are by wards. They basically include homeowner associations. Now, some of those can get outdated pretty quickly if somebody's no longer a president or they move and they don't update
Right.
them with the city. We don't have that information. But for the most part, those are HOAs, churches, and then business organizations. Again, we send something out to them and ask them to share with their,
Right.
with their neighborhoods or their constituencies.
Yeah, and some of the civic organizations. I don't know if, and also I think we included churches.
Yeah.
And we did get some response. The other thing we did that I thought had a pretty good response was we participated in the Annapolis Night Out, which I think is in August.
Yeah, and we did a press release on that.
It was a press release, and then we had posters and postcards at the different sites. And I thought those are really
And tabling at any of those are great opportunities for the flyers, to do like Day of the Dead Festival is like the weekend before the general election.
Mhm,
So, if you guys wanted to table at that's a city-run event.
mhm.
Tabling at any of those special events that happen in Annapolis, and they're all over. We have
Right.
events in West Annapolis, downtown, Parole,
And if we could
Forest.
get feedback from the county in terms of what options we have if we don't provide election materials in a second language such as Spanish. But the county used to have someone that you could call to get information.
So last year when we did that flyer, we did that in Spanish as well.
Mhm.
It
Okay,
was English on the front and Spanish on the back.
right. But if
We
had
have somebody
something, so a
in the mayor's
contact
office
person.
who translates for us.
Mhm. So if there's somebody that, Regina?
Hey, Mitchell, on the city's website, isn't it a drop down where you
It is a
can?
drop down for things that are on the city website that
Oh,
are
okay.
coded in HTML, not a
Mhm.
flyer, not a video, but
Mhm.
things that are coded, just as text.
Mhm.
You can just look at the website and it'll translate. And Google Translate has gotten really good.
So how would I find out if for the election page that is working?
It's I think it's down in the lower right-hand corner.
Okay,
Up
I'll
until-
check.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll check it tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Regina. Thanks.
And
That would be
that's like 60 languages. You can get that in
I thought I
Farsi
saw
and-
something said Chinese when I hit a button.
Yes.
So what I was doing. Okay.
I
thank
went
you.
to something in Rockville when we were looking at mail-in ballots before COVID, and one of the challenges is they have to do it in 3 different languages in that county because of the diversity. And there
Yeah.
were people at the meeting saying, we need more languages, but it didn't hit that threshold. But I think it was Spanish, English, and Korean, if I recall,
Mhm.
which is interesting. And
That's
then there
great.
was a lot of people, the challenge with Chinese was which do you do? Do you do Mandarin or Cantonese?
Yeah.
So,
And for the most part, we translate a lot of stuff, a lot of information that we put out currently. And for the most part, I use Google Translate and then I have somebody review it for.
mhm. Okay. The only last thing is, I think I saw one of the slides talking about ballot questions for city council approval. The change we're also having is that the city council can now initiate ballot questions, but citizens can initiate ballot questions. They were able to do it before, but we didn't have some of the particulars signed out. But
Gotcha. Okay.
Regina, did you have something else? Oh, no, she just clicked off.
Yeah.
Nope.
I
Debbie?
have something. So the city, we're considered a small city, and our voter registration is what, 26,000? I mean, 40,000 people, but what, 26? Is that it, Teresa or Regina or Eileen?
It's somewhere
20
around there.
About 26,000 voters. And so I've been trying to think that's not that many voters, but we have a lot of people in the city who aren't residents, and we have a lot of residents who go out of the city. So I'm trying to think what avenue would be the most efficient, economical, and effective to reach only our voters. Because again, we know that the Annapolis post office, is a lot bigger than the Annapolis city. And a lot of people are confused if they're even city residents or not. Regina?
Yes.
The county has a program to locate only city residents. Only city residents will be notified. So they have a process to figure out who should be notified.
Yeah. So that being said, right. So I'm thinking how, like a bus, the money on the buses, a lot of those people who see that are not going to be able to vote.
If you're talking about public communications, things that we're pushing out to the world, just sort of tossing out there.
Right.
What you're talking about, just targeting that message to people who are registered voters, I do not have the ability to do.
Exactly.
Because I don't keep those voter rolls and I don't maintain them and I don't have access to them.
Right.
And so what you're speaking of is a direct piece of mail that'll go to them. You guys write that and you all work with the Board of Elections on that. but there is a significant cost associated with that.
Right, yeah,
Because you have to think it's about $1 a piece for mailing.
yeah,
So 26,000 voters is $26,000 for each one. If you're just hitting households, that's still $17,000.
Right.
That's not
right.
Not free.
So thinking of mulling over all these ideas, of course, I like the free ones, and I like social media. I mean, I know we're throwing a lot out there, but it's free and it'll hit.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully it won't confuse those with Annapolis addresses that don't live in the city, but those who can vote. So I'm all about hitting the right and boosting the right, social media demographics. And then I do like the idea of at least one print, just to make sure something gets into every household. But again, I understand the cost. But yeah, and of course the press releases and all your avenues. We're not going to get everybody, but hopefully word of mouth. A lot of people say they get things word of mouth, and I like the neighborhood. I mean, we have 400 homes where I live, and we have a private Facebook page. And I could easily, we could easily post stuff on that. Everybody here is a voter. So I like the idea of the neighborhood organizations.
Okay.
Uh,
Regina?
let me just
It's
say,
also just, I want to add one thing. Hang on, Regina, I'm so sorry. But it doesn't help in Annapolis that 21401 goes all the way to Crownsville, and 21403 includes all of the Annapolis neck.
I know.
So even if I was to just isolate some engagement to those 2 zip codes, we're still capturing people who are non-city residents.
I know.
Sean Wampler, I spoke with her the other day. She has an interactive map that she wants to share with you guys. It has the information updated as to the changes regarding the redistricting.
Wonderful.
And you can put your address in and it'll tell you where your polling precinct is. She's working on it, and we're going to she's working out the kinks to put titles on things, and then we're going to invite her to your meeting so that she can show you how the app works.
Okay. Yeah, she
And
did
the city
something.
council also going to
Yeah.
have a work session on it in January.
Yeah, she did something, I think, last time that was really helpful with that.
Yeah.
My recollection with the last 2 elections is people make a lot of phone calls, and a lot of it happens on election day.
Mm-hmm.
I think out of 150 calls, 120 of them were, where do I vote? And then they were told that they didn't live in the city. So there is a mechanism to let people know they're not there. And then if they come, we let everybody vote. They'll just have to vote provisionally.
But Sean's interactive map, there's a way that you can do robocalls, and you can grab a section and they will send calls to everybody in that section. So I'm going to let her speak to it. We're going to get some details from her, but it was.
Yeah, the robocall thing, is that something that Sean runs, or is that the one from Verizon?
I'm not sure. She was just telling me about it related to the maps.
They've come out this year with severe restrictions on the robocalls.
Okay.
Like it mostly has to be an emergency of some road closures or some sort of
all right,
catastrophic thing that you have to tell people about.
And I think the county is taking care of, who's taking care of the voters who were moved from one ward to another?
Sean Wampler, and she's working with the county.
So they're going to get their own notices, letting them know what
they're going to send. They wanted to wait until the presidential election was completed to send out the notices. So they were trying to estimate. They said that the mailing should go out somewhere around January.
Okay.
Because they thought it would be confusing to send out any voter information while they're at wrapping up the presidential election.
Okay. That sounds good. Just one other quick question, comment for Debbie also. One of the messages that I think Mitchell did send out last time, and I'd like to see is to capture the people that aren't registered. They can register. Let's get people registered, and it's get them registered and get them to vote.
Yeah.
So we don't want to just focus on the people that are already registered.
Right.
We want people to feel that they can go ahead, and it can be a fairly simple process.
Yeah. And
Right,
also Mitchell mentioned this, but the candidates themselves will help us, right? The candidates will be sending out things and contacting and so I mean, look how much contact we had during this last election. I think the candidates will help get the word out, right?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
but they may or may not tell them where to vote and how to vote. I mean,
exactly.
in terms of, mail-in applications and that kind
Right.
of.
But there'll be a date on there at least. There'll be a date
Right,
and they'll be encouraged to vote and they'll be given a date. So
correct.
they'll help us with the communication too. At least
Great.
print, I think. They'll do
Right.
print.
Well, thanks so much, Mitchell. We appreciate all
you.
your hard work.
And look forward to, probably in January or so, look for the beginnings of the communications plan, which I'll start to write. And
Okay,
it'll be a Google Doc, so you guys will have everything you need to know. We'll have everything scheduled out weeks in advance. So
okay, yeah, I was gonna ask you what the next steps would be, so that'd be great. And we'll hopefully have our new member on board also.
great.
And we'll be able to get that feedback. So great.
Thank you, everyone.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so much, Mitchell. Great. Okay, all right, on to old business. Can wrap some things up. So in October, I reported on the status of O 2024, which is the surplus funds and reporting deadlines that went to the Finance Committee and was approved, but the Rules Committee asked for follow-up. So I did attend their November meeting, and they there were some changes and an amendment made to the legislation. So basically, there was a retitling of one section that's very minor, but they went ahead and they changed it so that candidates and campaigns can utilize campaign funds to pay late fees.
Okay.
They then also approved having a late fee waiver process and form. They did not say anything specifically about the waiver form. They seem to be fine with it. I can follow up on that. But they did cross out or eliminate candidates' financial consideration, I think was the word that was used. Cross that out, and they put in extenuating circumstances as we requested. So the new amendment is online. I have a copy of it. Let me look here. Yeah, on page 3, line 2, it said it changed timely reports required to timely filing requirements. And then under payment source, it changed candidates and campaign finance entities. It struck cannot and inserted can. And then, yes, so the other two things I mentioned. So that is on the amendment that's going to be presented to the city council on Monday's meeting. At the last city council meeting, the amendment had not been attached, so it hadn't been, the vote had been postponed. So that's all we have currently as far as things that are in that pipeline. I did meet with Cynthia concerning the provisional ballots and canvassing, which we've been talking about for a few months now, and did the provisional ballots we looked at and basically came up with, really felt that the current election code pretty much follows the state. It just puts it in a different narrative format, except for a couple of things that are new. So we might want to look at that rather than completely change it or say we're adopting it wholly. We would just add that. The canvassing is a little bit more complicated and needs some follow-up with the Office of Law. And I understand we do have to wait a little bit longer in terms of the MOU. I don't know if Regina or Ashley, if you could comment on that. Whoops, I guess we lost him for a little bit. But my understanding is that we're waiting for the MOU to come in. Oh, there's Ashley.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
Okay.
Yeah, so at this point, my advice is that we really need to see with all the changes that are going on at the state level, including the advice that is coming out from the Attorney General's office about how things are going to proceed under current state laws. I don't want, while I understand what you want to do, I don't want to necessarily use our time on it right now because I don't know how all of that is going to shake out. I think when we get an MOU, the final MOU, that'll at least give us good direction on what the state is thinking. But as of right now, it's all still a little unclear. So I don't want us to make changes to our code that we might have to go back and revise or change again, depending on how things shake out.
Mhm. Do we have an idea of when? I mean, are we having to wait through the legislative session?
I don't know if we're going to have to wait because well, I mean, currently they're not proposing new legislation. This is the Attorney General's office saying interpretation of the current state laws. And so it's not, I mean, I don't know, the legislative session might propose, but I mean, that is a whole nother candidate, depending on the pushback the Attorney General's position gets from like the local jurisdictions. There might be new laws that come out in legislative session. But no, as for right now, my understanding is from the legal counsel for the County Board of Elections is that they can't finalize the MOU until this shakes out a little bit because they need to, for not so much for the body of the MOU, but for the exhibits, they don't want to finalize those yet. They said they would get back to us once their election stuff wraps. So hopefully soon, but.
Okay, because I know one of the biggest concerns that has been expressed was for us is changing when ballots can be opened.
Yeah,
'Cause our
and that
says
is
they can't be open before the close of elections.
and that is definitely one of the things that I don't know how that is going to fall out depending on the Attorney General's advice in the MOU. That is definitely one of the things that could get changed or could not get changed. It's just, unfortunately, nobody was really expecting the Attorney General to issue a formal opinion on this, and they seem to be leaning towards providing very little help to local jurisdictions. So I don't know if we really want to change anything until we see what sort of assistance we're getting and to what extent.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll send in a reminder to their legal counsel. I know Gina checks in with David on a regular basis to see if, where they are with it.
And our previous legislation they've received and we hadn't really gotten any feedback. So that seems
yeah, I mean, the stuff that sort of doesn't impact them directly, but anything in which they're going to be more directly involved, like canvassing, I'm just a little bit more cautious of, because the other stuff they don't care about as much because that's how we're running our election. But the items where they in the past and hopefully still currently will be helping us with might be impacted.
Okay. All right. Well, keep us posted.
We send regular reminders, and I know Gina calls them and we email, and they do respond. They just say they're
I know they're so busy from the last election.
But we're in a good place. We don't have any deadlines currently. I think our next deadline isn't even until next year, so we're good at this point.
Right. It's just if we have to make legislative changes in the city, we still need to get it through the process.
Yeah, but at some point, don't we have to stop making changes to elections once the election, we're already in election season? I mean, we start off with some rules and we have candidates, and then
if the MOU says they want these things changed in order to,
yeah, well, I mean,
we need to get it
but
done.
that is easier. That's more like sort of emergency action. So if we get an MOU back and we get direction from the county/state that we have to change things, that's something we could more easily explained to council and pushed through, and also disseminate it in a different light to voters versus just making changes to make improvements, I guess.
Right. I mean, I think basically we're just going to end up saying we'll follow whatever they're canvassing
Mhm.
is. I mean, their past, concerns have been, ours is kind of outdated. We're using pencils and paper and they're using, scanners and things like that. But I think the critical element is, when are we going to start opening ballots?
Yeah.
So, okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, anything else, Debbie? Anything on
No,
that? Okay. All right, moving on to fair election practices. I know this seems to be getting dragged out. I wish we were big enough to have subcommittees. We could take care of this. After our last meeting, I did have an opportunity to meet with Brian and Alexis and the city's technology department, and we're amenable to working with us. Basically, we talked about with any changes going into the campaign fund report of trying to keep it consistent, but also make it more efficient. So what you did receive that was sent out is just basically it's some reformatting. And if it's all right, I'll just go page by page. The first page didn't change it to landscaping because it actually seems to work pretty well, but it does highlight a little bit more in terms of what type of filing. It's going to be initial, amended, or final. In our old one, we just had it listed as amended or final. And she tried to push it over to the right because it kind of got lost in the last
right.
the last type, and it frequently wasn't used. And then they did add some additional information about late fees, and also the box really focusing and making sure that people know that they have to, that the report must equal the previous report. I mean, the final cash balance in the last report has to meet up with the beginning. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it really doesn't change the order or really the content. Any thoughts on that? Any feedback?
Looks good to me.
Now in Schedule 1, and you'll see with all of these, it has been changed to a landscape.
I love it. Love it.
And all of these will be fillable. So the thought is candidates will have the option to utilize these Excel spreadsheets. If they want to use their own Excel spreadsheets, they can do it. But if they don't comply, we're going to have to send them back. That's what we've been having issues with. When we get these, Excel spreadsheets that doesn't tell us, are they contributions? Are they disbursements? They don't tell us what they are, and they go back. So hopefully campaigns will be happy just, downloading it. They can fill it. The city's not going to serve as a server for this information, but they can complete it, and I think it'll go pretty well. So it's just basically the same columns. It's date received, date and residence. That can be wrapped. So that should work out. The code. Once we make a final decision on the different codes, they're going to make it a drop down box, and that should make it also easier, so they can just drop it, and hit it. We've entered a little bit more, rather than have people do the descriptions down below, they'll have a column to put the description in. And cash and check, and then the aggregate amount and the final amount, and then the total at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, Schedule 1, when you look at the old and the new, it's like night and day. The formatting is so much better. My only concern on the new one is if there's enough space for the name and address in that box, or will the boxes expand, or can they be made to expand?
Right. So
Okay.
she and I went back and forth with whether they're gonna put that into this form or, she said, well, most people that are using Excel know how to do that on their own, but I said let's just do it so it's consistent. So I'll double check on that, but my understanding is that yes, it will allow that.
Yeah, everything else should fit, and it's a lot less confusing from the one we currently have
Mhm.
been using.
Right, it's a little cleaner too, so.
Yeah.
Any comments on this one, Regina, Teresa? No? Okay. So moving on to Schedule 2. Now, Schedule 2 is a little different. In the past, Schedule 2 has been loans/transfers. And at past meetings, we've discussed, we have transfers in two places. We have it in Schedule 2 and we have it in Schedule 3. And so in this draft, transfers is taken out of loans and just kept in Schedule 3. So loans will just be new loans. Now, something that was interesting that we haven't really been following is that loans that have been previously reported on Schedule 2 and not paid should really show up in outstanding obligations. But we haven't really followed that.
Right.
Because it's been in the instruction sheet, but it hasn't been on the paper. And I think it's helpful to have it on the paper. So that will be kind of I don't know if, especially when we make a transition, we're going to ding people for it, but we should probably encourage people to talk more about the outstanding obligations. It also includes a little bit more in terms of description of the loan and also puts in a column about, one didn't come out completely, that have all the parties signed on in terms of the terms of agreement.
Yeah, I have on that, it's a big statement there. And I'm
Right.
wondering, instead of saying, is this the full statement signed by all parties and blah, 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 and all the terms is attached? Can't we just say in that title of that column, the signed loan contract is attached? Instead of, if it's a signed
Okay.
loan contract, it's going to be signed by both parties. And the terms are in the contract, which is attached. So we don't have to
Okay.
say that it's signed by, that it has to be signed by all parties and that all the terms are attached.
Okay.
If the signed contract is attached.
Okay.
Also, there's a spelling error. I don't know if they're going to look at this again, but on Schedule 2, under where it says Schedule 2/loans new, it says loans previously reported on Schedule 2 and not repaid are to be reported on Schedule 4, outstanding obligations. Right now it says outstanding.
Right. You're a good editor.
Yeah. That's all.
Okay.
But yeah, I like all the changes a lot.
So again, it's not, not a lot of content changes. It's really just the format.
Yeah, the
Any
formatting
other
is
comments?
good.
All right, Schedule 3 again is disbursements. You've got your payee and the address, you've got the code, which will be a drop down. It's also asking for a little bit more description, which we haven't really put in there before, but I think that will be helpful considering some of the questions we've had in the past. So here it's where a transfer to other funds goes. So most of the candidates were using Schedule 3 to put in transfers. So I don't think it's going to be a big change, but we can point it out. Any
So
comments?
should we say disbursements/transfers on the title?
That's not is there Regina, any reason we couldn't do that? We can check on that. That makes sense. I don't think it would highlight it there. It used to be on the other one, so I don't think transferring it to this one would make a big difference.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on that one?
Nope.
Okay, then there's Schedule 4, which is the outstanding obligations. They did get that one correctly. A new column will be more in terms of the description of the debt. And then, and some of this came from the state where they have, ask our original terms of the loan agreement still current. Because sometimes that can change. And we have had some campaigns that keep these loans on the books for literally years. And they have funds, but there's nothing that I know of in code that says that they have to pay them off over, there's no time limit as such. I think in the state, there's like a 6-month limit, but I'm not positive for that. Any
The
other comments?
same spelling error, outstanding.
Oh, I thought they got it right. I'm looking at it. Okay, got it circled. Okay. All right, Schedule 5 is then in-kind contributions. That really hasn't changed. It's just gone to a landscape format.
I think they did a great job.
Okay. So the next step then is going to be going through the instructions. So the instructions haven't been done yet because we wanted to get these looked at. So the instructions will be done, and then also looking at the codes, which we've gone through once but haven't made any final decisions on them. It's really what we've talked about in the past is just going putting in a little bit more definition into the instruction sheets and then adding some additional codes. So I think that we should be able to have that by the next meeting. There was a question, Ashley, do we have you there? She comes out, great. One of the things that they were saying is that it would be possible that when they could provide a link, so these reports could then be posted automatically. Now, I think in the past, what we've done is, we've required paper copies, but they have to be signed. And I don't know, they say that there are some documents that can have e-signatures, but I don't know if this would qualify. First of all, would it even qualify? Number two, do we even want to go that route?
We do allow electronic signatures for a lot of things in the city. We have pretty much shifted away from original signatures, except for things that get recorded into land records. So like deeds, for example, or easements.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's any concern with that. The general policy is it either has to be an electronic signature through like some sort of secure process of some sort, or it has to be a scanned in wet signature. But we're not completely backwards, so we could potentially come up with a way to do it if you're interested.
Now, would it allow for 2 signatures? I mean, our forms have to have 2 signatures on them.
I mean, it should. I'd have to talk with our IT, but our DocuSign, I put like up to 10 signatures on it. So,
okay. So I guess what we just need to work with and get some feedback from city clerk's office and talk with Regina about how she feels about it in terms of holding on to it. Or I think one of the questions that came up was, how do we know when it's been submitted, or if there's problems with the posting? Oh, there's Regina. You had some concerns about doing that.
I just wanted to say that is if we do electronic signature, because Ashley and I do DocuSign basically every day. It's something that you have to track all of the time, even when the election isn't happening. If somebody just randomly sends the report, we have to look for it or make sure that it goes into a file, because those campaign fund reports were required to keep them for 5 years.
Yeah, so that was going to say that we do have to DocuSign tends to, by default, delete everything about after 6 months. So we would have to have someone track it and download it so we can retain it. But I mean, I personally, and I know like the city's permitting system has shifted over almost completely to electronic submittals with signatures. So it's not impossible. It just might be something we would have to talk to IT about to get the particulars about how they would run it and how we would archive it and retain it for a while.
Mhm. I mean, I guess it could be, we could say, yes, you can post it, but you still have to send us a signed hard copy. Or it could be they're posted and then they're downloaded and printed, but
I
I don't
mean,
want to complicate for the
I mean,
for
well,
Regina's office.
comparably, so what they do for like grading permits, for example, that go through like planning and zoning, is that they do upload and post it online, various documents, but then there are certain documents that in addition to posting, they do have to send in originals as
Mhm.
well. So again, I think we have enough variations that we could figure out something if you want to go that route. We have different Orky models for a variety of things.
All right. Well, I tend to defer to what Regina feels most comfortable with. So,
I mean,
I just wanted to say, as for our office, when it's not an election year, we're only 3. And it's a job, it's an extra duty. We will do it if we are required to do it. But as for right now, with this election and where we are at this point, I would be more comfortable with after the election is over, starting the July 1 report with working out the kinks for the DocuSign process. It's instead of during the current election process, because we have 5 reports to come in like every 2 weeks during this document. And if they keep sending if they send a campaign fund report, okay, and you send the first one, the first report that's due, and then you send the second report, and then they need to send an amended report. That's a lot of tracking while we're busy doing our full-time jobs during the election. It's a lot. And then we'd have to really make sure that they're detailed so we know what report we're actually receiving.
right. On
Yeah,
the other hand, you wouldn't have to be scanning anything.
Yeah. But we would have to check to make sure we had all of the scans we're supposed to have.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the amendment process we went
Yeah,
through
A
with,
lot.
I mean, some of them, yeah, I mean, if the original reports were uploaded and then we had, they were wrong, or the numbers were wrong or the codes, I don't know if they were missing things, and then we would have to amend it and then that would go up. I don't know. I'm with Regina. I'm just thinking, do we want reports? Do reports go up before we look at them?
Well, actually, once we meet the deadline, we post everything we have in the office.
Okay,
So then we'll know that's when we do the reconciliation to see what's missing.
So I mean, reports could be posted that have mistakes on them.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the thought is let's just maybe find out if it's possible, but probably not implement it until after the next election.
That would be
sound-
my choice, my pick.
All right. All right. Anything else along that line? No.
Nope.
Okay. General discussion. Anything anybody wants to bring up, especially as far as going into our next meeting?
I just have a question about our meeting minutes. Will they be going online so people and anybody can access?
Once they're approved, we post them
Okay.
we try to post them in the next couple of days. Yeah.
Thank you.
They're on the city website.
I don't
Okay.
think I've seen them though.
Yeah, they are. They are, but they're in a different kind of place. They're under boards and commissions. If you go to Board of Supervisors of Elections, you go down and I'll send you guys a link tomorrow because I had to find them myself.
Oh. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe I'm
because
just
I've
not
tried
seeing them.
finding them and I haven't been able to find them.
Because we just send them, send them, once you guys approve them, we send them to Hillary and she posts them. So she does that along her boards and commissions, Granicus system. So we just let her take care of them. But I will send you guys a link tomorrow to
Right,
show you
that'd
where
be great.
they are.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I had one other thought and I can't remember it now. So for next month, there's the possibility that we need to be reviewing the petition for the unaffiliated application. What are people's thoughts about doing it in person versus virtual?
Probably a good idea, right?
So what,
What
do
you-
in person?
Listen,
In
when
person.
Regina?
David did say that with the petitions, that a county representative would have to sit with you guys with the rolls, just in case there were issues. So
Okay.
I think that may have to be an
Mhm.
in-person meeting, but he said he was gonna, work out the details and shoot us an email, and I will let you know as soon as I receive that.
Okay, because then the next question becomes, do we do that as part of our next meeting or in addition? And then there's always the fact that our third meeting, our December meetings always fall on one of the midnight madnesses. And that can sometimes be challenging in terms of parking, even with the new garage. Well, let's wait to hear from David and find out. I don't think there are some things that'll be coming up, mostly just follow up on the fair election practices, but I don't see too much. I don't anticipate too much in terms of December. The other thing that would be on the agenda would be the annual report. I'll get that drafted for review in December. But if we can keep it light and do it all at one meeting, that'd be great. But if we, also find out from them, Regina, if they need us to go up to Glen Burnie to do it.
I
don't know.
will let you know as soon as I hear from David.
Okay. So right now we're still on for the 21st. I would say if we're not going to be doing that on the 21st, we can probably keep our meeting virtual. But if we are going to be doing that, we probably need to talk with Mark about availability for making it in
No,
person.
December would be the 19th.
19th, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we'll keep that open. Oh, great. Any other comments? Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, we had the full team on tonight. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
And
Thanks,
if no one has
Teresa.
anything else, let's have a motion to adjourn.
I think Teresa should not talk so much next time.
I appreciate your comments.
She's taking notes. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
All right. I motion that Bose for November 21st adjourn at 8:29 p.m.
All right. All right. Second. Yes. So moved.
Aye.
Aye. All right. I'm sorry. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good
Thanks,
meeting.
everybody. Thanks, Julian.